Okay, hello and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it goes for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. So we have Karina and Julia here. Some more people are hopping on. How's everybody doing? Jamie, Agatha, welcome, welcome. Kamami, bonsoir. Changing my life, nails. I just woke up from a really short nap, so I have some kind of crazy hair and I'm still a little groggy, but I'm waking up. So you just have to bear with me here. Speculator says, "Hi, I'm so happy to see you again. Thank you so much. And glad to be back." Donna, Deanna, changing my life. Ooh, I like that name. That's a powerful one. Jamie. Laura, how's everybody doing? How's your week? Katie, welcome back. She says, week 2. Good deal, good deal. She says, I have been waiting all day. Well, we're glad to have you back, and I hope that we can give you some of the support and clarity and validation that you're looking for. So welcome. I don't know if I told you guys this last week. I don't think that I did. I think this might have been something that happened after the live stream, but it's worth sharing. And I wish I could remember where I got this from. I think it was from another YouTube video that just happened to be playing while I was sleeping. Either that or it was a weird dream, but I don't think it was a weird dream. I really think it was another YouTube video, but it woke me up, whatever it was. And I'm like, wow, that's really spot on. So if you come across anything that sounds familiar, like what I'm talking about, let me know, because I want to watch more videos. Whoever, if this was a video that I was watching, I want to watch more of this person because it was really interesting. But anyways, what the concept was that anxiety comes from that. There's 2 different types of anxiety that stem from 2 very different parts of our brain. And if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, this makes complete sense. And I guess I had just never really thought about it in that way. And what's so interesting about this and so helpful and relevant for us is that because anxiety stems from 2 different parts of our brain, the way we go about addressing it and treating it we have to go about it in 2 very different ways. So here's what I mean. So we have anxiety that originates in our prefrontal cortex, or the logic and critical thinking part of our brain, or what we would refer to as our human part of our brain. This type of anxiety it's thinking about what we need to do in the future. So it's very thinking based. Oh, I've got bills to pay. I've got to get the kids. I've got to, go to the doctor and schedule this appointment and do this. And I've got to, It's just this rehashing of things we have to do, or it's thinking about things in the future. It's thinking based. The other type of anxiety originates in our amygdala, which is kind of the reptile part of our brain, which is a kind of regulates things we don't think about. So a lot of very basic things like breathing, heart rate, fight, flight, these types of things that we don't think about originate in our amygdala. And so this is oftentimes our fear center. So if we're in danger, that's that part of our brain that sounds off. So what this means is a lot of therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, are very thinking based. So it's about changing your thinking to change your behavior. basically, which that's great. And it is wonderful in a certain context. But if our anxiety is not coming from that part of our brain, like a lot of PTSD anxiety or CPTSD anxiety, its roots are in the amygdala. So trying to talk it through, trying to talk about it in general isn't going to be effective, because that's not where that fear is, and that's not where we need to treat it. So in order to treat this type of fear, it's in the answer lies in body-based approaches. So in order, the brain is so interesting. So basically it's body approaches. So getting grounded in yourself, trauma yoga, EMDR, EFT are different types of therapies that can help. Guided meditations, doing the walking paths, being present in this moment. So there's little things you can do, such as going and washing your hands with cold water, something that's stimulating and can kind of shock you, just kind of like reset your brain almost. So it kind of just wakes you up and puts you in the moment. Little things like that can really help. So I was watching, I wasn't watching, it was another article that I was reading today about trauma and fear. And one of the things that they were saying had to do with that, how when a person when they experience trauma, when it's because that kind of fear, that kind of trauma, it's based and processed and stored in the amygdala. Your brain, our brain is continually in that fight or flight. And so when a person's explaining what happened to them, it's not going to be a linear story, because we don't organize our information in a linear fashion in that part of our brain. And so one of the ways to understand how a person, kind of what happened to them, is you've got to be able to get to reach them through their feelings first, and generally through their different five senses. What did you see? What do you remember? What do you smell? Starting there, because that's the more primitive parts of our brain, and that's what people tend to remember. So I found that as a survivor of this to be very validating, because I hope helpful, because I think it can be really confusing and frustrating as to what's wrong with us. Like, why don't we remember, or why do bits and pieces of it tend to come back randomly, and how can we forget? There's things that I will forget, that I'm shocked that how could I ever forget that? And then I'll remember them, and then I'll forget. And that's just part of the brain reorganizing itself after something traumatic. And it can be anything. It can be an abusive relationship. It can be a manipulative or exploitative relationship. It can be traumatic. It could be a car accident. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be any number of things. So trauma is it's such an individual thing, and it's how each person kind of perceives and responds to different events in their life, if that makes any sense. So I don't know. Interesting. Okay. Let me scroll up here. Yes, absolutely. Free from narcissistic abuse says, amygdala is the primitive early primal response. It's great for knee-jerk responses to imminent danger, but it's easily triggered in abuse victims. Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Mandy was saying that she watched Angie's video on the 7 signs you're dealing with a narcissist, and she talked about walking depression and anxiety I feel like I've tried everything. The last resort is antidepressant medication, but I'm scared to take it. Um, well, I don't know. I'm a former nurse, and I'm also really big into alternative. I'm into exploring all options. I really feel like there's a time and place for anything that provides value to a person. And if you feel like you're out of options, uh, then then go for it. It can't hurt. It's the way I look at it with antidepressants is, some people only need to be on them for a little bit. Some people need to be on them for significantly longer. If you're to the point where your depression is just, especially if it's debilitating or really causing major life disruption, I would strongly consider it. I wished I had gotten on antidepressants a lot sooner than I did. I kept waiting for the feeling to lift and kept thinking, oh, I'll just do all these lifestyle changes and this, that, and the other. And I just didn't even have the energy to make those lifestyle changes. So and I still struggle with that. So um, I think the point being is you need to do what you need to do. And if you have fears, I would encourage you to talk to your doctor. Um, different medicines affect people differently. And, a lot of them don't have a ton of side effects. So just something to consider. But depression, after an abusive relationship, there's definitely this period where there is this sense of emotional dysregulation across the board. Anxiety is, I think, common and to be expected. So is depression. So is anger. And doing different things to try to relieve that can help. So, getting exercise, making sure that you're getting out and getting some sun, spending time to actually have fun is such a big one. So whatever that might be for you, making jewelry, making crafts, I don't know, going to trivia, spending time with some friends, going out and making some new friends, these kinds of things. It's really important, really being mindful of what you're eating and, just making it a point to eat nourishing meals more often than not, and to really cut out as much stress as you possibly can in your life. And then to also start looking at your inner circle. Because a lot of times what happens is people tend to just focus on this one relationship and they think, okay, well, my life's blown apart because of this relationship. But then it takes them quite a while to realize, oh my gosh, actually, I have quite a few kind of imbalanced or toxic relationships in my life. And I really need to start kind of shuffling some stuff around and getting some more balance there. So my guess is it's a little bit of all of the above. Okay, let's see here. Katie asks, how normal is it to go back into a funk of emotions? Most days I do so well and I feel great. And then I get back into a funk where the hopelessness kicks in. I'm isolating myself, etc. And Agatha says, it can be normal. I think our moods are a bit like seasons, and sometimes we need a lower mood too. And yeah, I would agree. I think all moods, all emotions, especially after something traumatic, are kind of normal and to be expected. I would say it starts kind of entering into the concerning zone, especially with depression, if it's really causing negative life changes and if it's lasting for more than 2 weeks. Which I know a lot of people are probably laughing right about now. They're like, 2 weeks? How about I've been feeling like this for 7 years? So that's a sign to go do something different than what you're doing, because that's a problem. So, and it doesn't have to be like that. So I would encourage you to explore the feelings of when you get back into a quote unquote funk, if you can, and it would help if you go to talk to somebody, whether it's a therapist, a life coach, a doctor, whoever, the more clarity you can give them, the better they are equipped to help you. So if it can help to keep like a mood journal, and this doesn't have to be any massive undertaking. You can just use a steno book and then just date it. Well, here, where's mine? Oh, I don't know. I just cleaned off my. Anyway, I have a day timer, so you could use something like that, and maybe it would be great maybe 3 times a day if you can remember to do that, or at a minimum once a day, checking in with yourself. It helps if you link it up to times that you're already doing other things. So let's say if you do it 3 times a day, you're doing it with meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Thinking about, okay, how are you feeling right now? Like on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like, man, yeah, I'm here, watch out world, here I come. Like you're having a great day, you're full of energy, you're feeling optimistic. And then 0 being like, I just want to sleep and never get up, kind of a feeling. Thinking about where you are on that range, and then what's going on. Were you thinking about something? Have you eaten? Have you not eaten? Did you get a phone call? Like what kind of, was there any contributing factor to the funk? And when you get into these funks, then how long do they tend to last? And does anything help with breaking the funk? So, kind of just explore. This is what kind of the more interesting parts, I think, of the healing process is it's such a tremendous journey within, where we're exploring ourselves, and learning all of these new things about ourselves. Like, well, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this is how I handled anxiety or depression or anger or what have you. And then examining, okay, well, what works and what doesn't work for you, and why do you think that is? And so then that way, if you do go speak to somebody, you can tell them, hey, you know what? I've tried this and this and this and this and this, and then this is what's going through my mind. And this is, I kind of get into these funks, and they can really help troubleshoot and kind of iron that out. And of course, we're more than happy to, just throw in our 2 cents here as well. But yeah, so I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. Thanks, Jack. That's a great question from Katie also. Hold on. I took too big of a sip. Hold on. Okay, I think I'm good. Let's see. Okay, Katie asks, how can we learn to get out of our negative coping skills and spend more time on our positive reinforcing coping skills? It's practice, 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 practice. And changing how we cope can be incredibly challenging, because for a variety of reasons. Because when we encounter stress, we all have our default ways that we respond to stress. And, we have our physical responses. We have fight, flight, or freeze. And then we also have these different emotional defenses that kick in as well. And so I would say the vast majority of this is happening to us subconsciously. So we're not even aware of what's going on. We just might know our life isn't working. Something that we're doing is just not working, or we're confused by it, or we're surprised by our reaction to something. So, for example, some people become really irritable and aggressive under stress, and they might take it out on, their kids, or they just might become really short and, just cranky to coworkers or whoever. Some people, if they go into flight, they channel that stress. They try to relieve anxiety through a wide variety of activity. It can be busyness, like really long to-do lists. It can be time consuming activities, binge watching Netflix, drinking excessively, kind of doing anything, working, exercising, spending money, sex, you name it, excessively. It's just, and not even have to be excessively. It could be like they're stressed out and then that's what they go run to, as a way of just kind of self-soothing. Freeze food is another one for a lot of people. Freeze mode is when a person just shuts down. So they might sleep a lot. I'm trying to think of some other forms of freeze, but that's the one that mainly comes to mind because that's my default and I hate it so much. It's just so debilitating. I think I've told you guys before, I have the defense mechanisms of a fainting goat. Like I get under stress and then I just pass out. It's awful. It's embarrassing too, because I literally, when I'm really stressed, I can feel it coming on and I have about 15 seconds before sleep just completely overcomes me. It's awful. Anyways, so kind of knowing how you currently respond to stress and then thinking about how you want to handle stress and then getting a plan for it. The challenging part with stress, again, has to do with how our brain processes it. So depending on the kind of stress that it is, if it's that deeper rooted, if it's not so much of an anxiety, like a critical thinking part type stress, I'm stressed about bills. I'm thinking about things. And if it's more of something happens, boom, you feel knocked off base, that's more amygdala based fear. So let's say, for example, you're at work and your boss starts yelling at a coworker of yours, and that's a huge trigger for you. Somebody raising their voice, all of a sudden you're feeling completely overwhelmed. You're in a flashback, even though it's not happening to you, you're just experiencing it. You feel completely knocked off base. And then you might start crying. You might run out of the room. You might become really upset and just start screaming at them. You handle it in a way that you're completely caught off guard. That's the challenging part. So when that amygdala part of our brain is activated, we have to train ourselves to override our reaction to that stress. It's just like firefighters, EMTs, police officers, first responders. Everybody has their own, like, their fight, flight, freeze, right? And the way that they overcome that is they train, and then they train under pressure. Because it's not instinctual for a person to run inside of a burning building. And so overcoming that fear to where it becomes a default of, okay, this is just how I handle it. And because this is why they train so much, because when any of us are under stress, we tend to become very reactive. But if we've trained for that and we've gotten to the point where we know that we can't rely, this is not the time to start relying on the thinking part of our brain. We've got to have it down so much that our movements down and what we're going to do down pat, because our thinking part of our brain is going to go offline. Now we're completely in reaction mode. So if we want to be able to react or respond in a healthier way, we have to practice that. And so a couple of things that you can do. If it's certain situations, let's say if it's confrontation that it really stresses you out, I would rehearse this ahead of time, because it's one thing to know it, but it's another thing to actually be in the moment and practice it. And it's very easy if we're not aware of what's going on neurologically with us to get really upset with ourselves and be like, man, I know better. I cannot believe I just yelled at my boss or got up and ran out of the room. Like, what was I thinking? And we can get so harsh on ourselves when we don't handle things the way we want to. But that's why we're handling things the way we're handling them, is we have our default. And when stress takes over, that thinking part of our brain just shuts down. So preparing for this ahead of time. So if confrontation is the thing that really knocks you off base, then practicing this, there's a technique called empty chair. So you can practice, you can have, let's say, two chairs in a room. One is empty. Let's say your boss really stresses you out. And in that empty chair, you can visualize your boss and visualize a conversation. And so imagine if your boss is really, I don't know, being critical or what have you, thinking about, okay, well, what would you say in response to that? Or how would you handle it? And generally, at least to start, the simpler the approach you can come up with, the better. And I encourage people to start practicing at first. You don't need to do obviously don't need to do all this perfectly, but practice giving yourself space. That's probably the most helpful hint I can give you with that, as far as breaking that pattern. So instead of, you can always practice like verbal responses. How would you handle that? What would you say? That's always good to do. But also, I would highly recommend that in the heat of the moment, the number one thing you can do for yourself, give yourself space. So if your boss comes into your office and starts criticizing you, or it's the middle of a meeting or what have you, train yourself. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to get up and you're going to excuse yourself to the bathroom. And the point of that is to give yourself time. Ideally, wash your hands with cold water. You're doing the body-based exercises to bring yourself back into the present moment, to get out of that amygdala part of your brain to where your thinking part of your brain can come back online. So once you're out of that, the reptile part of your brain, you're in the moment, you're doing this kind of mindful meditation with just washing your hands with cold water, taking some deep breaths. It takes generally about 3 to 5 to start activating what's known as the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's we have a sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, which is all the adrenaline and cortisol. And then we have the parasympathetic, which helps us to the whole like rest and digest. So it helps us to bring us back to normal. And that kicks in 3 to 5 deep breaths, slow, deep breaths. So doing those exercises, getting yourself back online, and then thinking, okay, what am I going to say? And then practicing that, and then going back into the room and realizing you can get up and go right back to the bathroom if you need to. You're better off doing that than doing something, that you don't want to. So practicing that. Number one, practice giving yourself space and just breaking the pattern of getting so terribly knocked off balance that you fight, flight, or freeze. Does that help? Let's see here. Marcel, let me scroll up here. Marcel said, yeah, I had a trigger this morning where I needed help and the guy was not compassionate. And that I broke down into tears and said to him, I have no idea what he was talking about, and that I'm getting off the phone and I need to call my case manager. It was stress. It was more that the guy had no communication skills. And he says, and it saddens me that people are not in the right jobs. Yeah, I agree with you completely, especially if their job is working with people that are either in crisis or have undergone trauma or have major stress in their life. I agree with you completely. And that we all have that point where we're just so stressed out, and then it just takes that one person who, I probably would have done the exact same thing. You just get to that point. I think we've all been there where you just need help, and you're like, I cannot, how is this happening? And this person doesn't understand, and they're not, I need help. And this is what I get. And it can just be so completely overwhelming. So I'm really sorry that you went through that. It's absolutely, it's frustrating to tears. So, and Kevin was saying, he says, I can't find a job that I can do. I was feeling angry about everything last night. Yeah, and that can definitely be frustrating as well. What kind of job were you looking for? Just out of curiosity. Marcel says, yes, thank you. He says, like, I've learned to deal with my emotions and not take them out on people, I think is what he's saying. Well, I think that's huge. You know, I mean, my goodness, that I think that you right there are like in the top 1% of people, because most people never learn those skills. And if they do learn them, they really, really, really struggle with them, especially under stress. So, I mean, take some time to pat yourself on the back for that, because that's huge, especially if you're going through a lot in your life and you have a case manager and there's, everything that you've got going on. That's very impressive. Uh, Elizabeth, oh gosh, there's lots of good questions. Elizabeth says, do healthy people do mirroring when they like someone? Yes. So mirroring is something that I don't, humans do it. I don't, I, I almost want to say that I think there's a very solid chance that all mammals do it. But don't hold me to that. I know that primates and such also do mirroring. This is something that we do. Again, it can be conscious or subconscious. For the vast majority of the time, it's a subconscious thing, unless a person has practiced it to where it is a more conscious thing. A lot of very manipulative people. It's not, it's like anything else. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's just kind of how it's used, with what's the intention behind it. So here's the psychology behind it: is we are all wired to basically like people who are like us. So we tend to feel safe around what we know. And if we know us, right? So we already feel safe with our likes and dislikes. And if somebody, mirrors us, if we feel that connection of, hey, this person gets me, we relax our defenses and we're going to be more inclined to be receptive to whatever they have to say or enjoy their company more. So, and mirroring happens in a wide variety of ways. Body posture, you cross your legs, they cross their legs, and vice versa. Because again, there's a lot of this that is subconscious. The style of dress. So, if you, let's say you're on a first date with somebody and one of you is way overdressed compared to the other person. And then the second date kind of might be like, okay, well, then you kind of get more in sync, either subconsciously or consciously, like, okay, that's jeans and a t-shirt. So that's what they're going to wear. That's what you're going to wear. Kind of a thing. Word choice. Again, we all do this. So depending on who you're around, your vocabulary might become, if you're talking to somebody in your profession, the word choice you use is going to be different versus if you're talking to your mother versus your grandmother versus your younger brother versus, I don't know, you're somebody that you really look up to in your field or in your life. So we're matching our all of that to the people that we're around. It's just kind of a way for us that we connect to other people. So again, it's not inherently a bad thing. It's more about being aware that it's a thing, and that highly skilled people do it intentionally. You go into a car dealership, they're doing it intentionally. A lot of sales, it's intentional. And because it works. So, a good salesperson and if is going to have very similar body language to you. They're going to be using kind of following same vocabulary. They're going to really try to connect rapport wise that way as soon as possible. And again, it's just because we tend to be more comfortable around people that do that. It can be very off-putting. For example, if somebody says to you, "Hey, how you doing?" And you say, "Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good." And then you say, "How are you?" And they say, "Oh, I'm doing well." Right? Even though that's proper English, it can kind of come across as that's a little off-putting, that now I feel self-conscious about saying, "Oh, I'm good." Now I feel casual. But to an astute person who's aware of these things, that will register and they won't do that, because it's just one of those little things that can just be off-putting and create separation unnecessarily. Anyways, so if we're talking about dating and stuff like that, that's a whole different ball game, especially with online dating. There's a lot of people out there that are really just looking for sex, and they will tell you everything that you want to hear, everything you like, they like. It's just a bunch of false flattery. It's a bunch of empty compliments, and it's just designed to get you into bed. So go slow. And I guess at the end of the day, realize that you set the pace. And, if something's not comfortable for you, it's not comfortable for you. It's completely okay to get up and walk out of that car dealership. Or if this person, and here's the thing with dating, if you are online dating, not putting everything that you're looking for in your profile, because then you're making it very easy for this person to create what they think you're looking for. And so if you find that, wow, okay, I'm doing most of the talking and I'm telling this person like everything I'm looking for and all my everything, right? But I don't really know a whole lot about them. For one, that's kind of rude and off-putting, but two, it's giving a lot of information out. So you want to make sure that there's a balance there where you're learning about them as well. You're not waiting. They're not always responding to what you're saying, that you're asking them questions, that to kind of just see who they are as a person. So, Lotus, that's a nice name. Lotus Ara Moon. I like that. Says, I'm struggling with being frozen in fear and not able to accomplish daily tasks. Also, not able to find a job where I don't get triggered by coworkers. So, you know what? And here's a thought for you too, Kevin. The job thing, there is a website called Cambly, Cambly, I believe, Cambly.com. And I'm sure that they offer other languages, but all that I'm familiar with is English as a second language. And it's really great. Basically, all you need to do is to know how to speak English. And it's people from generally other countries that are looking for a native English speaking conversation partner. And you set your own hours. There are no coworkers. You turn on your availability and turn it off when you want to. It's also, I have a friend who does it, and she just absolutely loves it because she's able to talk to people, all over the world whenever she's bored and just wants to make some money. So I don't remember how much they pay. I want to say it's between like $10, $12 an hour, but it's 10, 12 bucks an hour, and it's pretty easy in your pajamas at home kind of a thing. So that's something to consider. And the frozen in fear thing. So one of the things that can help with this is to set a timer and make it into a game. So set it for something low, like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. It's amazing what you can get done in 10 or 15 minutes. So let's say, for example, your house is an absolute mess and you just have been too overwhelmed to do anything, to do dishes, to vacuum, to clean up anything. Pick one area, because here's the thing too, it's about kind of giving yourself these small wins and creating that momentum. So focusing on an area that you think you can make some improvement in within 10, 15 minutes. Maybe it's your bathroom or, like, let's say the kitchen. So you set the timer for 10 minutes, make it fun. This doesn't have to be drudgery. So you can put on some of your favorite music. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. So some, like hippie jam band kind of music, just get into the flow and just go to town. Turn your timer on 10, 15 minutes, just knock out those dishes and then wipe down the counters. And then you're like, oh, okay, I just have a little island of serenity here. And then you can set the timer again, 10, 15 minutes. And again, put on some songs that you like and then do it again. And it's amazing, really. You can get a lot done in a very short amount of time. And then that momentum helps to build and it helps to get out of that overwhelm. So that's something to consider. And if you can, kind of outsourcing, or if you've got people that can help you, that can also be a fantastic thing to do. I've been kind of thinking for a while, it would be great. And I don't have the time right now. I think it would be great if in the support group, I'll have to talk to the moderators about this and see if this is something that we could maybe do. But to have something like this on a regular basis where it's just 10 minutes, these little 10-minute power sessions where as a group, we do this, I don't know, several times during the day, and people commit to doing whatever they're going to do for 10 minutes and then they post back. So it's like that accountability as well. Yeah. Doing dishes, doing this, folding laundry, whatever I'm doing, 10 minutes. This is my little power session here. And it can be fun because then that way you're not doing it alone. You've got a lot of other people here too. Linda Latina 33 asks, Dana, what's the site you mentioned? It's called Cambly, Cambly. Let me just make sure I'm telling you that correctly. Cambly.com. Yes. And let me see. If you go, trying to figure out, I'll have to play around with it and figure out where you go to sign up. I might have to ask my friend. I've never been to their website. Oh, it's in lots of different languages. This is so cool. I think you might have to sign up first before you can really see anything. So Cambly, I'll play around with this and report back next week. Sure. Linda says, can you put that link in the chat? There you go. It's coming out as Anonymous 1. I have no idea why. That's really weird. I don't even know what that is about. Huh. Okay, JJ, great comment. Says mirroring when done by supposed narcissists is manipulative, and yet we are told to mirror. Gray rock can be interpreted as silent treatment when accusing a narcissist. I'm sorry, but a lot of this just seems hypocritical lately. It's all about the intention behind it. So a lot of con artists and people that have with mirroring this kind of stuff, for most people, this is just, we do this subconsciously. We don't have to think about it, especially people that are team oriented and they want to create rapport with others. You're already doing this to some level. So I wouldn't even worry about it. I was just bringing that to light to say that this can be done consciously or subconsciously, and it can be done with good intentions, or it can be done with kind of some, dark intentions. The master manipulators of the world, who have their whole goal is to get you to do what they want. That's to benefit them. That's a problem. And really smooth talking, sociopathic kind of people do this a lot, and they can create rapport very quickly. But the problem is their intention is not good. It's not good. It's for their own selfish gain at the destruction of the other person. Gray rock. So gray rock is, I'm wondering if you're meaning no contact. So the difference between no contact and silent treatment. Silent treatment is a game, whether a person realizes it or not. It's a grooming behavior, and it's designed to teach a person a lesson. You confront me, you disagree with me, you do something I don't like, I'm not going to talk to you, and I'm going to make you twist in the wind and wonder where I am and wonder how, if I'm upset with you, and I'm going to punish you by not talking to you. And then the message is, this will teach you to not do that again. Versus no contact, which is, I am not talking to this person ever again because I need sanity and peace in my life, and I can't have that in my life with this person in my life. It's not designed to punish them. It's not designed to teach them a lesson. It's not designed to play some sort of game. It's designed to just cut ties and drive on. Gray rock is when we're just emotionally detaching. So it's kind of generally it involves keeping conversation very pleasant and polite, like you would in an elevator, or the conversation that you would have with, the coworker in an elevator, right? Or with your next door neighbor, that kind of thing. So it's just pleasant, polite, and brief. You're not talking about anything deep. You're not talking about emotional stuff. You're not talking about anything. You're talking about the weather, recent events, if even that. You're talking about the weather, basically. Rebecca says, is it common for narcissists to start arguments out of nothing just so they can storm out? Yes. Yes, it is. Or it's basically to punish the other person. It's bizarre when you are on the receiving end of this, because things will escalate very quickly, and for seemingly no reason. And it feels like this person's trying to pick a fight with me. And even if you switch topics, or it's weird. It's weird how that happens. Even if you switch topics, you can kind of feel like, I'm getting the feeling this person's trying to pick a fight with me. And so I'm just going to kind of hop out of the way. It's just like it's like you're waving a red flag in front of a bull, except you're not. It's like the bull has the red flag in front of it, and it's just in front of the bull, kind of a thing. And you can hop out of the way, but then the bull turns around and it comes charging back at you again. It's really wild to see stuff like that. I had a coworker like that once. I had never experienced it. If I probably have experienced that before, I was just never that consciously aware of it. And that was really strange. So. Linda says, I'm not seeing Dana's response in the chat. For whatever reason, my response is coming up as anonymous one. And I don't know what that is. It's some, I don't even know, YouTube account that I've never seen before. So it's cambly.com. Let's see here. Oh, very cool. Bonnie says, oh, Dana, LOL. I love the Grateful Dead. I saw them twice. They're awesome. I go to tribute bands now. Yeah, it's wild. Who I think is John Mayer is now the lead singer for the Grateful Dead, which that's wild. Like, how did that happen? But he's great. He's great. I didn't think that he would be, but he does a really fantastic job. Angel says, what is my ex doing to our 8-year-old? She's visiting him right now for summer visitation. It's been 1 month so far. I have 2 FaceTime visits with her per week, and she is becoming very distant. Yeah, it's hard to say what's going on. I would just encourage you to when you are doing FaceTime stuff, try to make it quality conversation. So you're asking about her, is she having fun? Asking her engaging questions, that let her know that you're interested and to kind of get her talking so you can just kind of see what's going on in her life, like what's the high point of her day? What was the low point of her day, or the high point of her week or the low point of her week, or, who is she spending the most time with, and what's her favorite thing she's done this week, and just stuff like that. And then when she gets back with you, I would just really strongly encourage you to spending a lot of quality time with her and one-on-one. So whatever she might, I don't know, if she's into crafts, if she likes doing escape rooms, if she likes, I don't know, whatever she might like, making a real concerted effort to be doing one-on-one stuff with her, talking about your day, telling her how much, you missed her, you loved her, just wasn't the same without her. And that you're so glad that, if she had fun, you're so glad that she had fun. And, that you want to, let's have fun while, let's do stuff together while she's back, and this kind of stuff. So there's just a lot of that bonding stuff, and hopefully she'll kind of open up to you a little bit more. Yeah. And Holographic says, yeah, Angel, no worries. And she says, hopefully she's having fun and just trying to keep the peace between you guys. Yeah. Hopefully that is the case. Angel says, yeah, she'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll take a few days off from work to spend time with her. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great time. Really, with kids, it's the same. It's with any of us, really, but kids especially. It's just letting them know that they are just that they're just loved, and that you see them, right? Like you see their uniqueness, and that you're just sincerely enthusiastic to have her back and doing things that she enjoys. And you might also want to just let her know that, if you're sensing that she might be feeling it's awkward, like, oh, well, I don't want to talk about, fun stuff I'm doing over at Dad's. I don't want that to be hurtful to Mom, kind of a thing, to just let her know, oh, honey, you know what? It's okay. I'm an adult, and, I want you to have fun. And I really, and I just want to hear about what's going on in your life. And please don't worry if that's the concern. Like, don't worry. I'd much rather know what's going on with you more so than anything else. And letting her know that it's okay, that she can talk to you about anything, like fun stuff or things that might have hurt her feelings or whatever, but that you're on her side. And, um, like that she's your kiddo and you love her. Okay. Julia says, please help. My name is Julia. Uh, what's going on, Julia? My rifle, my pony, and me says, my daughter won't speak to him, dealing every day with the mess he left. She is a preteen. I think a lot of that kind of stuff is she's of the age where, you know, they say anger is the bodyguard to hurt. And it's the truth. And, if, um, if that's what's going on, if he left this mess and she's upset with them that, the family's divided, or the way he treated her, the way he treated you, the way things went down, those hurt feelings surface. And we all do this to some degree, right? So kind of shutting down, isolating, not wanting to talk to him. You can't make her really do what she doesn't want to do. And I would encourage you to not try it, but also, I guess, just to validate her. If she's upset and hurt, it's okay for her to be upset and hurt. What happened, it sounds like it was very upsetting and hurtful. So her response is completely appropriate given the situation. So, she'll either in time decide that she wants to open communication or she won't. And that, sometimes it's for the best. If you've got a parent or an ex who's incredibly selfish and their behavior has done nothing but hurt the child, sometimes it's better to just kind of, not push any of that and not encourage any of that, because it can just set the child up for further heartbreak if that parent ups and leaves again. What a lot of parents do, Angie and I were talking about this yesterday in the live stream, is, and again, this is, people have good intentions when they do this, but they try to relieve their child's anxiety about everything that's going on. And so they'll say, oh, but you know what? Mom or dad really loves you. They can't show it, or, they're busy. And then they kind of create this cover story for them. And to try to not hurt the child's feelings, but that can be really damaging, because it's, if it's not true, if the parent is just not emotionally available, and they might not love their child. Some parents don't love their children. And so I think it's not that we need to tell children that, but I think at a minimum, we just need to make it known that it's that the child is lovable, and that it's unfortunate that the other parent can't show that to them, because they deserve it, because there's so much that's right about your child. And then talking to your child, this is, you're creative, you're funny, you're intelligent, you're so good in science, oh my gosh, or you're so fantastic at art or soccer, or listing specifics about that child that is just unique to them and what makes them, right? That makes them special and individuals, and that's lovable and likable about them. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Jennifer says, would you call incels like the ones doing these mass shootings narcissistic or antisocial? The way the one guy's manifesto was written, from what I hear, is very narcissistic. I haven't read it myself. Yeah, Jack asks, which shooter? Are you talking about the El Paso one? Oh, well, thanks, Cad Red, for the cute emoji who says you're number one, and for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. The El Paso one. I only heard a little bit about that. My take on that, it almost sounds like just my off the cuff opinion. It sounds like some untreated mental illness to me is going on there, coupled with some definitely antisocial ways of handling things. So, I think there is a lot to be said with, there are quite a few channels and groups out there that really do, they harp on certain topics, and they really create, that it's this us against them mentality, to the point of I would say it's inducing violence to the point where people do feel that they're in the right. That hey, I'm not killing anybody. I am forced into taking action because of this. Because there's so much of this kind of outraged sensationalism with different media out there. And, that kind of sensationalism, kind of, just riling up the crowd. Plus, if you have an unstable person, or a person or a person who is frustrated and dissatisfied with stuff they've got going on in their life, and it's easy. It's always easy, right, for us to point the finger at somebody else. This is why I'm not getting ahead in life. This is why I'm still single. This is why. It's because of these people over here. And if these people over here weren't here, then I would have the resources to do what I need to do, or my life would somehow be very different and better. And, that's, it's easier to think that way than to be fully accountable. Okay, let's see here. Oh, well, thank you, Sarah. She says, you're amazing, Dana. I love this time with you each week. It helps me a lot. Well, I am so glad that this helps. And, I think, and I know I've said this a lot, but I really do mean it. I think the real magic happens in the chat. It's hearing the feedback and input from everybody. And I just absolutely love all these different side conversations that happen within the chat. And even when people disagree with each other, it's just so cool to see good conversations happen. And it's amazing the different points that other people bring up that I just would never have thought about in a million years. So I really enjoy these weekly chats too. It's just very interesting. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everything you do for each other, and all the great questions and ways of looking at things that you guys come up with. Interested. Great question. It says, I'm experiencing gaslighting. It feels like if I talk to people about the situation, they think I'm just being paranoid. Do I just not even talk about it? This is a difficult one. And I guess I would need some more context as far as what's going on, and if you can distance yourself from whoever is gaslighting you. But that's a very common reaction for people to think that you're being paranoid or that you're blowing things out of proportion. I've experienced that as well. And it's a terrible, terrible feeling, especially if you already struggle with your perception of reality and kind of wondering, am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? Like, what's really going on here? When you encounter the next person who does something like that, it really can rock your world. So I have found that, yeah, I just don't talk about things. If people don't understand what I'm saying, then there really is no point in talking about it, because I'm just going to get frustrated and they're just going to get annoyed or concerned. There's not going to be the effective exchange of communication that I'm looking for. So agree. Again, it depends on the situation. And if you need this, if this is a work situation, if there needs to be some sort of like agreement or resolution to happen and to smooth things out, or if this is a situation that you can distance yourself from. Jennifer says, yeah, the selfishness from these shooters just seems so all about them. They have no thought or empathy for others. Yes, I would agree. To me, the shooting, that is more in the realm of like antisocial behavior. Whether or not they have, they're full out have antisocial personality disorder kind of remains to be seen. But that way of handling problems is so extreme that's not normal. So, and there's that lack of empathy and that kind of the level of aggression, the level of destruction, harm to others, these kinds of things. That's in the realm of antisocial. And it is troubling. And it's I was watching, I fell down another hole in YouTube the other night. It was interesting. It was something about where did all the serial killers go? And they were saying, there was this, there was quite a few serial killers back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then you don't really hear about them anymore. And what I thought was so interesting about that was one of the people in the comments had said that, yes, but now what we're seeing more is mass shootings. And I thought that's really interesting. I wonder if there have been studies that have been done on that, where there is more, or if we're just hearing about serial killer stuff, it's just less reported now for whatever reason. I don't know. But it kind of makes you wonder if these people in a different time would have been serial killers, kind of they are serial killers, right? But not in this, they're mass murderers. They're not serial killers in the sense that it's, prolonged over a period of time. It's all at once. Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer was saying, yeah, maybe they saw the same thing. She said, I saw something like this in a group today, that they had turned into mass shooters. It almost, yeah, I agree. It's interesting. It almost seems like, you think about how sped up society is getting. It's more of that instant gratification. Whereas I could see how that, this sounds really dark, but how that could kind of be the next, I guess, more of a how do I say that without it sounding as dark as I don't just as disturbing as it sounds in my head. For people that are drawn to that as a way of handling their anxiety, I could see how it would be that instant gratification where it's just that one moment versus dragged out over a period of time. So I don't know. It's disturbing. Oh, I agree. Grace says, I've got to be honest. All of the shooting is making it really hard to step out into the community. Yeah, it can be scary. It's scary thinking about going to large places. And that's a good point too. Yeah, my rifle, my pony in me says, well, maybe it's because of the quick fix and the acknowledgement they get. It's just that magical thinking. Yeah, I could see that. It's that instant gratification and then that 5 minutes of fame. That's just so sad and sick. Um, Benjamin says, I have read somewhere that mass shooters have come from a fatherless home. I wonder if there is a connection. My guess is it's not necessarily a fatherless home. Uh, it's I think there's a lot of different factors at play. I'm just thinking about the kids from Columbine and trying to think of different mass shooters that I've come across. It tends to be, I think when a person goes on some sort of mass killing spree like that, my guess is there's a lot of pent up frustration and there's probably a feeling of disconnection from other people that's been going on for a very long time. They are loners, they are outcasts, they're kids that are getting bullied, they're people that are just frustrated for whatever reason. And there's not, because, and I don't know, I'm just a big fan of this stuff is not, talking to kids, especially about emotion, starting at a young age, nobody talks about this stuff. And so then when people experience it, it's that feeling of isolation and loneliness is even more profound because then they feel like they're the only one going through it and that it's not going to get any better, especially kids that are in high school when everybody's telling them, oh, you've got it made, right? Like high school is the best time of your life. And for a lot of people, it's not. It's the worst time of their life. So like, it just that kind of just adds, turns up the heat on a pressure cooker kind of a thing. So, I think the more kind of love and support and quality people, because it's not just about having a necessary, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think quality men and quality women are really needed in a child's life. And the role of a quality man is very underrated. And it is very important because, it's, they're oftentimes, men play a really important role in children's lives. And, but it's the quality ones that do. Just like it's if you have an incredibly dysfunctional mother or father, parent in general, that person can cause a tremendous amount of damage. So it's not necessarily like, oh, you're better off just having any father at home or any mother at home. They need to be able to be, who said it? I forget who said it. I don't know if it was Pia Melody. Somebody referred to it as a good enough job parenting, which ideally wouldn't include abuse of any kind. So not verbal, emotional, physical, psychological, sexual, that kind of stuff. So, um, XOXO says, yet society brushes it off and says, but they love you if they are still there, despite them treating you like trash. Yeah, well, that's dysfunctional thinking. And, right. And I'm glad that you can see the problem with that, because if I say, I use the example of a person that if you've ever known a person that's had an old car, right? Or a car that they love. My cousin, for example, I think she might even still have her very first car. I need to ask her. She saved and saved and saved and saved and saved. And when she was 16, this was a long time ago, like close to 20 years ago, she bought a Honda Civic. Okay. So this wasn't even like a classic 1965 Mustang or anything like that. It was a Honda Civic. She got the exact car she wanted. She loved that car. I think she might even still have it. She was so good to that car. She named it. She had custom plates. She, it was her baby. And she took that car. Last time I saw it, it's been a long time. It was in mint condition. Like, she truly loved that car. And she was really, really good to it. That's how people act. When we care about something or someone, we treat that thing or that person with appreciation. If it's a car, we clean it out, we maintain it, we take care of it. If it's a person, we do things that are emotionally nourishing and emotionally caregiving to them. So we don't, we wouldn't say, oh yeah, she loves her car, and it's just trashed out on the inside and trashed out on the outside. And, that's not somebody that loves their car. And there would be that disconnect if she was like, oh yeah, I love my car, but then treats it like that. It's like, well, you're saying one thing, but you're doing another. So your actions speak louder than your words, because words are easy to say. So when it comes to relationships, when somebody says, oh yes, and it's so common for people to say, oh, well, this person loves you. Look, they wouldn't be in therapy. They wouldn't go to couples counseling with you if they didn't love you. Or they wouldn't have apologized, or, oh my goodness, this person's sobbing, they're crying, they're showing up at your doorstep with flowers, they're texting you 63 times in a row. Nobody's that persistent unless they mean it. And those people that say that are not familiar with the power and control dynamics of an abusive person. So I just wouldn't even listen to them, because they do not know of what they speak. Like, they don't know what they're talking about, because they haven't ever experienced it. Because to an outside person, it would look like that level of intensity looks like sincerity, because who else would do that? But that's not how abusers are wired. Okay, let's see here. I am probably going to say your first name incorrectly, and I apologize ahead of time. Atia? I hope that was in the ballpark. Atia says, can you talk about memory loss after mental abuse? Sure. So there's different types that can happen. Probably the most common is what's referred to as repression. So and again, these different defense mechanisms that I'm talking about, we all experience them. They're not necessarily a problem. It's like the degree and frequency that we're experiencing them that can be a problem. So when we're repressing something, we're subconsciously keeping it out of our brain. And it can be forgetting, quote unquote, forgetting. We forget that, I don't know, like that certain events happened. You forget that you need to do certain things. Oh, that you promised your child that you would take him to soccer, and you forget. Because deep down, you don't really want to go, because your ex is going to be there. These kinds of things. So there's kind of these glitches in our memory when it comes to this traumatic event. And it can happen, again, that's probably a pretty good example, because it can happen in a wide variety of ways that don't seem directly connected, which can kind of make us question our sanity. And like, wow, I was never this forgetful normally, but man, I'm just forgetting stuff kind of across the board, and what's wrong with me? But that's very common with trauma. There's abuse amnesia, which is just another term for repression. And it's the same thing. So it's forgetting. And here's the other thing too. When a person experiences when a person experiences any event, let's just even back it up even further. they're not going to remember every single thing that happened in that event, which is weird because we all think that we do. We think, but have you ever had that where you and a sibling or you and a friend, let's say you go on a vacation together and then you talk about it like a year, even 6 months later, and they'll mention things that, like events that happened, and you're like, I do not remember that. Or they even have pictures and you don't remember it because it just wasn't significant to you, but it was for whatever reason, it was somehow significant to them. Like, I don't know. You went to a restaurant that they really liked. It was just a normal, your recollection of that day was the beach and, certain other high points, or they remembered the drive up there and how beautiful the scenery was, or a funny little lizard that was on the side of the road, things like that. And you're like, oh, I do not remember that at all, or getting lost, or what have you. Some other examples of things that are commonly repressed. So, for example, a woman, when she has a baby, oftentimes will only remember certain parts of the birth, and by and large forgets. There's some sort of memory of it was painful, but a lot of the active pain is forgotten. Sort of like a tattoo. When people get a tattoo, they remember it's painful. They might remember certain parts where the needle hit that were really painful, but then they forget. And then what do? When they get another tattoo, they're like, oh yeah, I remember now. Like, this was really painful. Or they have another baby and like, oh my God, how could I have forgotten? Like, this was so awful. Somebody stop me from doing this again. Kind of a thing, Or same thing with these relationships, because, and especially with these relationships, because there's so much that happens, and a lot of it because we're not aware of all the different forms of abuse and why certain things caused us pain. So the more we learn about manipulation and abuse, the clearer we are able to understand our situation. So when we have these memories again of certain conversations or certain arguments, we're able to see it with a brand new understanding. And then it's sort of like, wow, I cannot believe I forgot about that, or I cannot believe that didn't register as a problem to me. It's pretty wild. If you've ever gone back and visited, if you have dysfunctional family dynamics, and if you aren't there all the time and you periodically go back and then you're around it, and you're like, oh my goodness, wow, okay, yeah, I forgot that this is how this was, and I cannot believe I was around this for so long, and I can't believe this just didn't register as what this was for so long. So let's see. Let me see. Let me scroll up here. Okay, so is it Atia? Atia. Let me know if I'm saying that right. It's a beautiful name, Atia. Hopefully I came closer that time. we'll see, I guess, huh? Let's see. Oh, she was saying that her concern was that these memories might, just kind of flood back. Here's the cool thing about our brain, the human brain in general, is when we're experiencing these different defense mechanisms, and there's quite a few of them, depending on who you ask, there's 10, 15, there's probably even more than that, 20 different emotional defenses that we have. And the more kind of what would be considered primitive ones, kind of the default ones that kick in when under extreme anxiety tend to be denial and repression. And when I say primitive defense mechanisms, they're categorized in different ways based on how effective they are in the long term. So there's primitive ones, there's ones that are considered less primitive or more mature, and then there's ones that are considered mature. But don't assign any kind of judgment to that, even though it can feel like I have mature defense mechanisms, right? Or I've got primitive defense mechanisms. It's don't do that to yourself. It's how our brain is coping at that time. And so these primitive ones, when they do surface, like denial and repression, I think regression would also be considered more of a primitive one as well. These can be helpful in the short term, but they're just not helpful in the long term. So obviously it's not helpful to be in denial for the long term, because then we're not living in reality. We're living in this altered reality. Or if we're continually repressing anything that's anxiety inducing, again, we're living in a very altered reality, kind of this cherry picked, based on what we can handle kind of a thing. Same thing with regression, which is where a person tends to regress back to a place or an age that they feel safe. Children tend to do this a lot when they're under stress or have experienced trauma. Adults we do it too in our own way. Children might start wetting the bed or sucking their thumb or crying or start doing baby talk. If there's it's really common around with divorce, when parents are divorcing or when there's fighting in the home, these kinds of things. And then once the child feels more stable, they're able to act in a way that's more age appropriate. But the reason they're doing that is because it's just to get that safety and reassurance. Adults do the same thing. So we might regress. We might become more dependent upon somebody else if we're going through a divorce or some sort of major stressful event, becoming kind of more childlike in certain ways. So the point of that is when we're under stress and your brain, everything that your brain is doing, even though it might not feel like it, it's to protect you. So when it's blocking things out, when it's denying things, when it's repressing things, it's doing so because to fully comprehend the magnitude of the situation, there's a solid chance that your brain is like, I cannot handle that. And if I were to handle that, I would send me into an emotional collapse. So again, this is very common. Another example of this would be if you have a loved one or you yourself has a terminal illness, and or a loved one dies, and we're struggling with dealing with that because there's just so many emotions all at once, and just it's a lot to process. So what the point of this, the point of me saying this is, with trauma, especially, our memories tend to kind of come back in waves, and they'll come back when our brain basically feels that we're able to handle more information. And the full memory or series of memories might not all come back, but the ones that are ready, that your brain feels like, okay, we're somehow triggered. We see something, we smell something, we get some sort of trigger. It reminds us of this memory. If our brain feels like we're close to being able to handling it, that memory can surface. It can feel safer for it to surface. And then it's going to be up to us how to process it. So it can be good to kind of get a plan of, okay, if some really uncomfortable stuff does start kind of washing up on shore of your conscious mind, okay, then what? Like, then how would you handle that? And, so starting to kind of get a game plan, do you have a friend that you can talk to who understands? Do you have a therapist that you can talk to, or a life coach? Or, there's a lot of, for really heavy stuff that feels like it can just sink a person, there's a lot of the talk lines Um, Either they're just, some of them are like suicide related, but some of them are just plain talk lines where people just need, they're having a hard time coping, and it's just, they're free. So it's worth looking up, or going to different support groups in person or online and kind of coming up with a plan. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. Let me. Um, let's see. Cha. Ricky asks, does anyone have tips for dealing with a manipulative neighbor? Oh boy. I think it would basically just be steering clear. Steering clear of them as much as you possibly can would be what I would recommend. Because I mean, it's kind of knowing, like, what do you have control over? What do you not have control over, kind of a thing. So, let's see here. Jack says, I'm ready to start a small "we learned the hard way" club. Haha, that's funny. Yeah, no joke, huh? Yes. And Dinah says, yes, believe me when I say I've had to learn a lot the very, very hard way. Wisdom has been a great teacher. Yes, I hear ya. That's been my experience too. What was it? I think it was John Wayne who said something like, some people, um, I don't know, some people know to not pee on the electric fence, but some of us just have to find out on our own, kind of a thing. And that, oh, yeah, it's definitely been my experience as well. Okay, let me scroll down here. Yeah, Lola, I agree completely. Says a narcissistic neighbor will seek you out and bring you into their bubble. It's just very dangerous. And she says, just avoid. Yeah. And yeah, they'll bring you into their bubble, and they'll bring you into their chaos and drama. And yeah, I think that's the best thing to do, is just distance. Because there's no being, it's just going to be exhausting. Like, you can try to be as mature and adult and, as you possibly can with this other person. But if they're not, if they're looking, some people, they just go around getting their needs met by being pot stirring like that. And if that's that kind of person, I had a neighbor like that once. Oh my gosh, it was so exhausting. You just got to steer clear, because you're not going to change them. And odds are talking to them isn't going to do anything. So all you can really do is just have boundaries. Uh, ABS says, have you ever heard of or seen a narcissist change? Is it possible for them to have empathy? I'll just say this. I'll just make a general statement. I've never seen a porcupine become a kitten. I've never seen anybody with outrageous behavior of any kind that's been so problematic do a 180 and turn into something completely different. They might kind of act the part like every now and again, but it's not, you know, it's just acting the part. I mean, for a person to really fully change their personality, that's just such a massive undertaking. And most people, especially problematic people, there's a reason they're problematic. Like that's how they go about getting their needs met. So they have a whole like you're talking a massive undertaking. Massive. It's more than just, you know, it's basically like rebuilding a whole car, like everything. It's everything. You're rebuilding everything. It's not just changing out the engine, although that's a big deal too. It's everything. So, because your personality, it's the way that a person perceives the world, it's the way that they interact with others, it's their mindset about things. It's that personality is generally thought to be fairly formed by the time a person's 7 years old. And there's changes that people can make, but they have to be highly, highly motivated to make them. In order to have that motivation, they need to experience pain. And a lot of people like that just don't experience pain because they feel entitled and justified. It's their worldview. It's their worldview of they are always right, and it's very immature. It's like a little kid, 3 or 4 years old. They should always get their way, and if they don't, then you're mean and bad. So if you set boundaries, you're mean and bad. I mean, like that kind of a mindset. You're talking a person's they're going to have to mature like 20 years and learn all of those lessons and practice all of those behaviors and learn everything that's maladaptive and that's huge. That's huge. You think about those of us that are on more of the opposite side of the spectrum and how difficult it is for us who experience a tremendous amount of pain from our actions with struggling with setting boundaries and just being self-protective. How difficult it is for us just to be self-protective, which is one of the hardwired trait that we all have. How difficult it is for us to get more in balance with that, how long that takes. Anybody I think that's really been on the road to recovery knows it's an ongoing process, and it's, you're talking years and years and years. And you still have these aha moments of like, oh my gosh, this is, something else that's surfacing that I need to work on, or what have you. Lola says, oh, and by the way, I have been following your videos for years, and I'm very sorry you are not aging well. The dim light is the right idea. How humbling for you. Well, Lola, I thank you for noticing. I don't even know what to say to that. That's ridiculous. Let's see. She says she never dimmed the light in her earlier videos. She knows it. Well, I am filming in a different location. And I don't even know what I don't even know what to say. You should have seen me last week. I'd actually dyed my hair yesterday. So that was a big plus. My grays were coming through. I am 42 years old, and I am happy to be 42 years old. I have no problem with being 42 years old. Let's see. Farah's journey was saying, 1% of narcissists can change, but the other 99% do not, but there's a chance. LOL. Yeah, here's the thing. I wouldn't hold your breath. And I think if we can look, if we can really, because to whoever, I mean, it's like, for example, my brother, here's a good example, is my brother is a fitness buff. This he's been in shape ever since he was like 10 years old. I'm talking like ripped. He loves working out. He loves it. And he loves everything about it. He loves fitness. He does fitness competitions. I am the exact opposite. I struggle so much to get exercise in and to do what I need to do and these kinds of things. And to him, he just doesn't get it because it's so second nature. It's so much a part of who he is. It's just right up there with breathing. I think it's like when anybody has anything figured out. So for people that have empathy and compassion and they're caring, it's so second nature for you that it's sort of like, well, yeah, just, don't be a jerk, right? Like it's just real easy. But it's not, because everybody's different. And so everybody's just kind of wired different and has their own strengths and weaknesses. And if it was that easy, then people would be doing it. But it's not that easy. Just like it's not easy for a person to get sober or to quit smoking or to stop hoarding or, to do any number of these things. Uh, oh, that's okay. Thanks, guys. People are saying, "Oh, Dana, you look beautiful. You're just a troll." Yeah, I honestly don't care. I am not here to. This is not a beauty channel, so like, I'm not worried about it at all. Yeah, and if I have, God willing, hopefully I'll be doing this until I'm 102. So check back in about 60 years, Lola. you'll you'll really see what aging looks like. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Oh, Sharon says a partner with schizophrenia came off meds and is making me feel really stressed. Well, that's understandable, Sharon. Um, is this the first time that your partner's come off medication? While I'm waiting for you to answer that, yeah, I agree. Farah's Journey says, yay, I'm turning 40 years old. My mom died at 39. Oh my goodness. She never made it to that milestone. So every day is truly a gift to be alive. Yeah, I agree. We were talking about that the other live stream, like with birthdays and how, after a certain age, they can just be really stressful. And we can really get down about that. But I forget who said it, Mark Twain or somebody said something like, old age is something that's denied to too few, something along those lines. And I just thought that's so true. Here we spent all this time trying to fight aging and we complain about getting old, but man, it really is a gift. It's a gift to be the age we are, because so many people don't have that privilege for whatever reason. And yeah, it's a gift. Life is a gift. It really is. Amber says, hey, Dana, I didn't know you dyed your hair. I actually gave that up and I'm letting the gray come in. Surprisingly, it's been a real adjustment. I didn't know it was going to be so hard. Yeah, I was thinking about it today about I don't have that many gray hairs. And mine aren't coming in gray, they're coming in silver. So it's like tinsel, especially when you have dark hair. There's just a couple and they're shiny like tinsel. And don't do this. Okay, so here's the mistake that I made. So when it first started coming in, I would tweeze them out because you see them in the car mirror, the rear view mirror. And you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And then you just tweeze it out real quick. Don't do that. It's not a long term strategy because then what happens is when they start growing in, then they grow straight up, and then you look like little thing one. Or little thing two with just this like one little hair sticking straight up. It's not a good look. So yes, I just have been thinking. I think when I start getting more silver in my hair, I think I will just go full out. Maybe I'll just go platinum. Something. I don't know. Something fun. It's hair, right? Yeah. Omaluk says I love silver hair. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Omaluk says I call them glitter. uh, okay, let me see here. We scroll. Darren says, it's a new partner. I never knew him without the medication. I had 2 fantastic years together. Now he's paranoid and tracking my every move. We don't live together. Um, I would encourage you, if they're at the point where they are psychotic like that, then you're not dealing with a person who is sharing the same reality as you and they need help. So an option might be if an option, well, there's a couple different options. If you know of any of their friends and family, it, ideally a family member that knows their diagnosis that they're close to see if you can call that person and see if you can get them to talk them into going to the doctor and letting them know what's going on. Another option, which I might even actually, I take back what I said. This is what I would do because I'm a big fan of just erring on the side of caution. If this person's paranoid and they're tracking you, I would just jump straight to calling non-emergency police in your area. And you can make this anonymous, which I would encourage you to do. And say that I would let them know, hey, this is an anonymous call. I really need you to do a welfare check on this person. I've been dating him. I found out this person has schizophrenia. They've been off their medication and this person's incredibly paranoid and they've been following me and tracking me and their behavior is just becoming more and more concerning. And I was wondering if you could go over there and do a welfare check. And so what will generally happen is the police will go over there and they'll do kind of a mini assessment at that time to figure out if that is this person in reality or do they need to go someplace to be stabilized. And if it's clear to them at that time, okay, yeah, there's something off here, like this person's paranoid, you can generally tell when a person's struggling with untreated mental illness. You can tell generally. So odds are they would take him and get him into a place for like a 72-hour, well, to some sort of hold where they can do a more formal psychiatric assessment and then get him stabilized and then go from there. So it depends on where you live and, the laws of where you live and these kinds of things. But I would start with that and I would give them a description and see if they can do extra patrols by your house and whatnot. So I am so sorry that both of you are going through that. Schizophrenia is just such a tragic illness, but it's just one of those things where I think most people with mental illness, and I'm this way and I struggle with depression, major depression, where if you're doing good and you're on medication and you think, you know what, I got it. I got this on my own. I don't need anything else. I don't need these meds. I can handle it. And then they go off their meds and then boom, it's not good again. So schizophrenia is people struggle with that with schizophrenia and with bipolar and with all kinds of things. So it's very common for a person because nobody wants to live their life taking medication every single day. And especially if they're having a lot of side effects from them and whatnot. So part of it would be to figure out why did your partner stop taking medication? Was it side effects? And if so, kind of what side effects? And then talking to your, if they're in the hospital, maybe mentioning that, or like this is why they stopped taking their medication, or if they couldn't afford it, what was going on. So hopefully there's people there, like a case manager or somebody at the hospital, that they can work on addressing those issues. Were the pills too big? Were they just inconvenient? Because they can generally switch over to injections, but some of them are, once a month or once every couple months. There's options out there is what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm so sorry. And I hope that ends well. Yeah. Omaluk says, the meds often slow them way down. And in a way, I can't blame them for wanting to get off them. Yeah, I agree. It's a challenge, when a person is struggling with side effects from medication, it's really, yeah, it's really limiting. So it's challenging. And there's just a lot of side effects with mood stabilizers like that. Oh, I agree. Yeah. Salon says when I went to my sister's psychiatrist appointment today, and I think it went well. And people who suffer from schizophrenia are people. And so not to label them with just the name of the illness. I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I apologize if I was doing that. I definitely, that's one of the things I really like. That's been a fairly new thing in mental health over the past, really more so in the past 5 years, but it started probably 10 years ago with making the shift to what's known as person-centered language. And I just love this so much. But for years and years and years, it was referring to a person, oh, that person is an anorexic, or they're schizophrenic, or they're bipolar, or, it by the diagnosis. And thankfully that's, moving away because it's people first. And then it's, you're at the core, we're all people. And then you have different things. You're not a diabetic, right? Or you're not an anorexic. You're a person with diabetes. You're a person that's struggling with anorexia. You're not an alcoholic per se. You're a person that's struggling with alcoholism. So it's a little shift in language, but I think it is important for all the reasons that Salon was saying. Jack says, I'm maybe do what I'm considering. See if you can color just the grays. I want to color my gray facial hair something wild like dark blue. Have you ever seen Perez Hilton? He's a gossip YouTube vlogger. He's probably bigger than YouTube. I don't know. Gossip vlogger guy. I had never seen him before. And the other day I came across one of his videos and he dyes his beard all kinds of wild colors, like electric purple and electric blue. And, it's kind of, I don't know. It's just, I would have never thought to do that in a million years, but it's kind of fun because why not, Mm. Let's see here. Uh, Dina says, can a person change out of a personality disorder? Like a person with borderline personality disorder no longer has those traits. I won't say narcissistic personality disorder simply because I've never seen any of those change at all. So you bring up a really great point. And again, it kind of the main shift has to do with the language, the change in the language that surrounds different diagnoses in general, especially with mental health. So again, for a while, it was personality disorders, right? And that just sounds so like foreboding and heavy. Like, oh, gee, I mean, who wants to have a personality disorder? I mean, that just sounds like a death sentence, right? I mean, like, oh, you're never going to have a good life because you're personality disordered. Moving that more towards borderline features or kind of features of this. So, which I think is a better way to describe it because it's traits. We're talking about traits. All of the different traits within personality, quote unquote, personality disorders, they're all human traits. So none of this is, like way outside the realm of, what's human or what's possible. It's all human behavior. It's the degree and frequency and the kind of rigidness that's when it becomes a concern because it's negatively impacting this person's life or the life of those around them. And it also has to, it has to be not considered a part of their culture or a normal stage in development. But yes, if we back it up a little bit and we look at, okay, so if a person has certain features of their personality that are really imbalanced, let's say, for example, borderline personality disorder, let's say mood swings, self-harm behaviors, impulsiveness, fears of abandonment. Okay. Let's say that those are some of the areas that are really driving a lot of their behavior to where it's a problem, right? Can they work on those to where those are more balanced and it's not negatively impacting their life? Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody can work on, who is anybody to say like who can and can't change? That's why I was trying to explain earlier with narcissistic personality in particular, and same thing with antisocial. In order for any of us to change, because even if we know, yes, there's effective treatment, we know alcohol, we know people that are struggling with alcoholism, they can get sober. We know people that are struggling with anorexia can be treated for that and they can they can maintain a healthy weight. We have treatments out there for certain difficult to treat disorders, right? Or health challenges, however you want to phrase that. However, a person has to be motivated to actually do the work of changing. So that rehab center isn't going to do the work for them. It's going to just provide a space in which they can hopefully develop the necessary reflection to break through that denial to where they're motivated to start doing the work. Because they have to be the ones to sustain it. And this is why people go into rehab a multitude for eating disorders or for, drug addiction or alcohol or anything like that multiple times, because change is hard. And the reason those maladaptive behaviors are there is because the adaptive ones aren't. So all of that maladaptive ones have to be unlearned. Those defenses have to be softened. New ways of coping have to be taught and practiced, which we talked about earlier. That's a process, and it can be incredibly frustrating and depressing and overwhelming. And I think everybody kind of goes through this path of, like the dark night of the soul kind of thing, where you're trying to change stuff, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward, and you just feel like, well, I'm just never going to get anywhere. So what's the point? It's whatever it might be. I mean, even getting organized or getting better with managing money or smaller habit changes are difficult. So bigger habit changes or ways of interacting with the world or perceiving the world are even or even more challenging. So, so with borderline personality disorder, there's dialectical behavioral therapy, for example, which is mindfulness-based therapy. It's emotional regulation. It's just fantastic. I think that it should be part of standard curriculum starting in like first grade. We'd all be better off, frankly, because nobody's taught this stuff and it's not intuitive. So I think it would benefit everybody. And yeah. So hi, what was I saying? Sorry, my little hamster just fell off the wheel. But yeah, I guess the point is, yeah, if a person sees a trait within themselves that they don't like and they are able to sustain the motivation needed to actually work through the process of changing it, absolutely. But if a person's not motivated to change, they're just going to give lip service, or they might have, just flashes of action, but it's nothing sustained. Lola says, something about, I just lost it. I just hit the down arrow and lost it. Something along the lines of 8%. Estimates are that 8% of the world is narcissistic. Let me scroll up and see if I can find it, because I want to make sure I have the wording correctly, and I can't find it. Shoot. Okay. Anyways, something about is 8% of the population is narcissistic. Do I think that estimate is high or low? I've heard a wide range of estimates with that, anywhere ranging from 2% to 10%. I think it really depends on I think it depends on a lot of things. Where are they? What kind of studies are they doing? What kind of, I guess, what is this? What is the sample size? Where are they getting the sample from? A lot of the studies that have to do with mental health tend to come from the people that show up for these tests. I don't think it's indicative of a normal sample size. So you tend to get people that are either in prison or that are in psychiatric hospitals, or that are responding to different tests where they get paid like $50 or $100 to participate in tests. But even with that, the people that participate in those, you're going to have generally, low-income people that are responding to that. And so it's still going to be, it's just going to be skewed. It's not going to be like an accurate sample size. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think true, like, I think if you were to combine antisocial behavior and narcissism into one, I would say, yeah, maybe 8 to 10% sounds about right to me. And what's scary about that is that's just kind of the stuff that we tend to see. There's a lot of stuff with people that can hide it really, really well. And so, I don't know, scary stuff. Jennifer asks, is schizophrenia genetic? My aunt had it, but my grandmother thought it was misdiagnosed bipolar. My aunt only had one instance of hearing things. She said she heard voices coming out of the car she was sitting in. My mom's bipolar, but she swings into mania. My aunt was just always severely depressed before she committed suicide. Well, your aunt might have had what's known as schizoaffective disorder, where it's a combination of like a thought disorder, which is schizophrenia, or an affect disorder, or a thought disorder, and then mood disorder, which would be bipolar. So it's schizoaffective is some of the features of schizophrenia and some of the features of bipolar mixed. So generally, if there's depression present, especially major depression, that ended in committing suicide, especially that kind of stuff, it could be that that's what she had. So I'm really sorry about that. It's just so tragic, when the human brain, all of these different, everybody's got challenges with stuff, and it's just, I don't know, my heart goes out to people that are really struggling, especially with stuff like that. But schizophrenia is, and bipolar both have a genetic component, and schizophrenia tends to surface not all the time, but a lot of the time in kind of the late teens, early 20s for a person. And generally at first, it is often misdiagnosed as depression at first. And then later, when more of the kind of signs of psychosis start up, that's the challenge, because sometimes people they don't talk about that. And so they try to keep it hidden for a long time, because they might have the insight as to something's not right here. And they're embarrassed about it. Let's see. Okay, I'm scrolling up. People are talking about BPD and saying, yeah, and Jack was saying to Truth Seeker, yes, I'm thinking that there's a significant portion of people with BPD that want the condition to be less seen as a personality disorder and more as a trauma response. Yes, and here's the thing: is I feel like there's some additional. This is just my 2 cents, that there's some additional diagnosis needed, because it doesn't cover. Because I think it's too much of an umbrella term for too many things, and I'll be curious to kind of see where that goes in the next 5 or 10 years. Because I feel like we're just on the cusp of trauma research, and we're just kind of the next wave of even beginning to understand trauma. I was watching, I again fell down another hole in YouTube and was watching a TED talk on, it was by a pediatrician I don't remember when it was, but I think it was fairly recent. Anyways, her talk was on childhood trauma and kind of what she was seeing in her office. And somebody had mentioned this to me like 15 years ago. And this was one of my earlier aha moments of, oh my gosh, I wonder if there's something to this. And it kind of piqued my interest with the mind-body connection with trauma. But I was at a conference, 15 years ago, and somebody there was talking about the effects of childhood trauma and how children are frequently diagnosed with ADD. And this one social worker was wondering how, how often ADD was misdiagnosed for unprocessed trauma, for PTSD. And this was 10, 15 years ago. So it's interesting that's anyways, the point is, it's still this lady's TED talk. This was a new realization for her of, oh my gosh, I don't think these kids have ADD. I think this is trauma, and they were starting to identify it. So we're right at that forefront of people beginning to understand, childhood trauma isn't just something people grow out of. It's not, getting bullied at school or something like that. It's not a small deal. Everybody reacts to traumatic events differently, and what might be a trauma to one person isn't to another. That's what can be so tricky about understanding trauma. So as far as borderline personality goes, that is such an umbrella term for such a wide range of symptoms that potentially have a wide range of causes. And the intention can be very different. It's just problematic when you have both. I think both an abuser and their target could potentially have the same diagnosis. I think there needs to be something. We're missing something. There's more pieces to that puzzle. And here's the other thing too, is not only that, but it's, is this long-standing behavior? Is this personality, or is this a trauma response? So, getting diagnosed with anything right after trauma isn't going to be the most accurate diagnosis, because a person's very dysregulated. It's sort of like if a person has an active addiction and they get a psychiatric evaluation. If they have an active addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or what have you, the behavior that they're exhibiting isn't standard behavior for them. So any diagnosis is most likely not going to be accurate. It's the same thing. Like, of course, a person that's been through trauma, they're going to come across as like an anxious, unhinged, depressed, nervous wreck. It's just, there's a lot of challenges with the mental health system, I guess is what I'm saying, and how this stuff is understood and diagnosed and treated and all of it. Okay. I agree too. Jennifer says, I wonder how many BPD people are actually have CPTSD. Yeah, I would agree. And especially if we're talking childhood trauma. And if that's the case, I think, Pete Walker's take, and I would agree with this. I think if I understand him correctly, which if I'm not, set me straight. But my understanding is that CPTSD, it's generally caused from his take on it is childhood trauma. And if that assertion is correct, which I think is very valid, there's definitely a case to be made for that, then the result would be personality disorders from that, because it's thought that personality disorders kind of stem from something traumatic happening. So kind of based on that logic, then a person would have both. They would have that like borderline personality as a result of that CPTSD. So I don't, it's interesting stuff. I think for anybody's purposes really, but especially for ours, if we can just focus on the traits, and that's so much, it's easier to kind of bite into and give us, direction of, okay, this is what we're experiencing now with our personality. And this is what we're learning about ourselves. And these are the realizations that we're having as far as this is probably where this came from. And this is what we need to do about it, and blah, blah, blah. Like that can help kind of give us a focus, a direction of treating it and, moving forward. Ricky says, yeah, don't get me started on nervous wrecks. Yeah, and True Seeker was saying, yeah, absolutely. CPTSD needs more recognition. Yeah. There's trauma yoga is a new thing, as is EMDR is making more headway with things, which is exciting. Um, Trying to think of some other forms of trauma treatment that are out there. I don't know. I think I think it's exciting times to be living in. We'll kind of see where everything goes in the next 5 or 10 years, and um, my guess is it's going to be a lot of mind body awareness kind of stuff. Yeah, Lotus or a Moon says, yeah, wow, amazing concept that ADHD is actually PTSD. I tend to agree. Yeah, Lola says a classic childhood trauma behavioral adaptation is freezing. I'd think ADD and ADHD are kind of the opposite of freezing, but it's interesting. Yeah, I think you could probably make the case that that's more of a flight response. Um, the different children I have worked with over the years that trauma man, because kids don't have the vocabulary for it. We don't even have the vocabulary for it, but they don't have the vocabulary for it. They don't have the kind of emotional maturity or the understanding, or just a lot of the things that are going on with that. So it's very common for children to just be very reactive and to either go into fight or flight. You just see a lot of behaviors within children, a lot of aggression, a lot of acting out, a lot of hyperactivity, these kinds of things. So I could see how it could be, misdiagnosed as ADD or ADHD. For sure, troubles concentrating. I mean, if you look at the symptoms, a lot of it's like, okay, trauma, 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 trauma. Trouble regulating attention, trouble with hyperactivity, trouble focusing, trouble, um, impulsive behavior, uh, reckless behavior, just all kinds of stuff. So, okay. Yeah, I would agree. Jack says, I've had to tell people that DBT has done a lot for me with CPTSD, but I still run into folks that think DBT is a BPD thing only. There's a lot of acronyms in one sentence there. Yes, I would agree. I think by and large, the vast majority of people out there, including a lot of mental health professionals, tend to think they just associate DBT with borderline personality. And, but I think, times they are a changing, and DBT is fantastic for trauma. So, um, Jennifer says, yeah, my aunt's diagnoses always plagued my grandmother with confusion. I can imagine. And it's such a mental health kind of stuff. It's so tricky. It's just very common because, you've got somebody, a mental health practitioner who can only make a diagnosis really based on what they're seeing or what that person's reporting. And if that person's not kind of, for lack of a better term, like an accurate historian, like if they're not a reliable narrator, I guess is another way to say that, it can be very difficult for an outside person to kind of figure out what's going on, especially if they're only seeing them, for an hour once a week or an hour once a month. A lot of people, especially with mental illness, they might, go in, uh, get a diagnosis, and then only see that practitioner once every 3 months or once every 6 months. And their diagnosis isn't reviewed. But I think it's most people I've talked to have gone through several different diagnoses before they found one that was like, actually, okay, no, this is really what we're working with here. Um, Blackwater Threat says borderline personality disorder people are not accurate historians in therapy. It's so difficult to say, kind of across the board. But we were just talking about this, like how it's such an umbrella term for such a wide range of behaviors, and keeping in mind too that all of these behaviors and even personality disorders, they're on a spectrum. So you might get somebody that has, even take like antisocial personality disorder, for example. You can have somebody who has a lot of that, they're aggressive, they're manipulative, they're exploitative, they're, superficially charming, they're, have a bunch of kind of, they're not a big fan of like rules and laws, and they just don't care, and they lack empathy, and these kinds of things. Well, that can really range. You could work with somebody that's like that, who's just just impossible to work with, or you could be working with Bill Cosby, right? So it's this wide range of ways that these kinds of behaviors show themselves. It's not all. That's what's so tricky about this, is it's oftentimes difficult to tell unless you're on the receiving end of it, like what you're actually seeing, especially if that person's only going into therapy by themselves. Because here's the thing is, I don't know if you could say any of us are really accurate historians, because we all see things from our point of view. So we're going to go in to therapy and say, this was our perception of events. And this is what caused me pain. Parents and children, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Parents and children really, really, really struggle with this, because from you could, I don't even know. I'm trying to think. You could you could do so much for your child, and but because they're not seeing your behavior from the adult perspective, they're seeing it from their child perspective. So they don't realize, that you had to budget, or that how much money you spent, or how much sleep you lost, or how much time off work you had to take. That they don't realize any of those adult things, because they're not an adult. To a child, because children, all they know is, you're my parent, and this is just, you're supposed to do this, right? Like food, clothing, shelter, and you're supposed to take me to school and get me school clothes and school supplies, and like there's that expectation that children have. And like there is no reward from a child. There's just that expectation there. But if a parent could do all kinds of things, make all kinds of sacrifices, the kid doesn't realize it. And then the parent doesn't do something or says something, and that child has really hurt feelings or is, deeply wounded by whatever happened. The parent forgot that they had a dance recital, and the parent missed the dance recital. And the child hangs on to that and interprets this through this whole wounded child perspective of, oh, my parent doesn't love me, and I can't believe they forgot about me. And then, I mean, my goodness. And then that stuff can snowball. This stuff just happens. And then if you talk about it, I mean, anybody who's ever talked about things in their childhood with their parent of, hurt feelings or what have you, generally the parent will get really defensive and be like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I did all of these other things for you. Like, do you remember any of that? Like, do you remember any of it? Because I did all these other things and you don't even see this, but you hang on to these 3 things or whatever that I did. And then of course, because the parent's getting defensive, which doesn't help. And then the child is getting even more defensive. And now they feel ashamed and embarrassed. Like, oh, I should just be happy for what I have. And they're totally invalidated for the pain that, whatever the parent's actions cause. There's just they're looking at 2 events very, very, very differently. So the point being, we all struggle with being an accurate historian to some degree. And it's a challenge. It's kind of, I don't know, it's interesting to see, to kind of watch different videos of individual therapy sessions. Like there's stuff like this on YouTube. It's so interesting versus family sessions and the dynamics between people. And you see more of like the full picture emerge of different, just all of it, personalities and perspectives and all of that. But the differences in perspective are really strong when you're talking about personality disordered stuff, especially with, and in all fairness, it depends on the level of insight that person has. So for example, if a person has borderline personality disorder and they don't realize that they have, or not even borderline, if they have different types of attachment disorders, if they're avoidant or if they're kind of this insecure or kind of disorganized or what have you. And, they don't realize it. And not only do they not realize it, but they don't realize the impact that has on their life and the way that they perceive things. They're not going to be aware of that there's a difference between like real rejection and perceived rejection. And that their way that they're filtering information, it may not be accurate. So, but if the person with antisocial personality or narcissism, because their personality is so comprised of different defense mechanisms, a lot of which are like world bending. I mean, it's completely reality misshaping. So they might really believe that because they do kind of they cherry pick what they want to believe, and they get rid. This is what you see, like projection with anybody that doesn't want to own problematic behavior. But especially narcissists and antisocial, like you see a lot of different defense mechanisms coming up because they're not owning their behavior. And so, if they're in therapy, they're going to give this very skewed, distorted view of things and generally make themselves into the victim because they don't see how their behavior is the problem because they feel entitled and justified. And it's that whole adage with abusers of, well, look at what you made me do. Well, I ran the guy off the road, but he cut me off, or I was having a bad day. I mean, there's always some sort of justification that they can give in their mind, but the rest of us know, like, well, somebody can, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, that doesn't mean that you can run them off the road. We understand that that's frustrating and enraging, but society expects that you're still able to moderate your behavior, but they don't understand that because they feel entitled. I got angry because this person did XYZ. So therefore I did this extreme react. I kicked, I hit, I spit, I stabbed, I, did all kinds of really aggressive over the top things because look at what they made me do. I didn't do this. It's their fault. They provoked me. But it doesn't work that way. So, okay. And I would agree. Jack says, I think it may differ from person to person, from narcissist to narcissist. I think some narcissists are more aware of the suffering they cause. I absolutely agree with that. I think some are sadistic and very, you know, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Shoot, what was I saying? Some are sadistic and some have that insight and some do not. Some are malicious and intentional and some are just, I think, deeply unaware and just deeply dysfunctional. I think they're all kind of deeply dysfunctional, but it's a deep unawareness of their behavior. Okay. Let's see, Laura. Let me scroll up here. Catching bits and pieces of it here. Laura says, again, I'm missing parts of it. She says, what do you mean by boundaries? This guy can be so great. And then I feel like I do something wrong. And it sounds like it's just kind of hot and cold. And we stopped talking recently for a month. Did he stop talking to you for a month, or was this? Something about cheating. Hold on, I'm scrolling up here. Okay, I guess here's my thoughts, Laura. At the end of the day, if you are dating this man, then you need to ask yourself, what are you looking for in a partner? And what are you looking for in a relationship? Are you looking to get married and have children? If you are, I would go into it with, okay, if you have 5 children with this man and they are all going to be exactly like him, how do you feel about that? Just exact replicas of him. So asking yourself this, because it's really important that when we get married, that we're looking for a partner and not a project. So I wouldn't, definitely I think a lot of women especially go into this thinking, oh, this guy will change. He'll change when we get married. He'll change when we have a baby, this kind of stuff. And people don't really, they don't. And especially under stress like that. So, and they tend, I would see, does he have the qualities that you're looking for in a partner? And some of the more foundational ones that are really important are, what is your ability to communicate with this man? Are you able to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication? Are you able to share like your hopes and your dreams and your fears and your concerns? And probably most important, because it's great when people always say, well, the good times are so good. Well, yeah, the good times are so good with everybody. And that's why they're the good times. It's more important as far as how things go when things aren't good. How do you guys handle conflict and confrontation? Does it end in a fight? Do you feel heard? Do you mention your concerns and it's like you never said it? Does he take what you have to say seriously, or is it invalidating? Oh, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're just like your mother, I'm not that, you're just defensive, invalidating. Is there a desire to actually work as a relationship? Is there a desire to compromise? Is there squirrely behavior going on? Things like this. I think the older I get, the more I'm I'm a big fan of, it's so important that people be able, because conflict and confrontation are, to a degree, a normal, healthy part of a normal, healthy relationship. It's how we handle that makes all of the difference. And so it's because when two people are being authentic, you each have your own wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions and, hopes and dreams and all of that. And that there is going to be conflict between that at times. And so it's how that's handled that'll make or break that relationship. If both people are willing and able to handle their anger appropriately and know when to kind of say, you know what, I am just upset, I need to go for a walk. I'll call you in a few hours, or I'll see you in a few hours, or let's talk about this later, or something, versus becoming verbally abusive or punishing, or that kind of stuff. So these are some questions I'd ask yourself. I'd also look at morals and values and life direction. Is this relationship heading in, are you both on the same path? That's a big one. And that can be really, that's hard. That's really difficult. So yeah. Okay, Laura, but that can be really dangerous thinking. So she was saying, I know he has the potential to be a great person, but I know he isn't a bad person, so I try to make it work. I love him, and I really don't see my life without him. So here's my thought on this, and this is probably going to seem really controversial to a lot of people, but staying in a relationship just because we have feelings for somebody is not the right reason to stay in a relationship. Like, there needs to be a foundation there, because love is an emotion, especially these feelings of that intensity and that attraction and that chemistry, that level of connection with another person is important. Don't get me wrong, it's important to have that, but if there's not that, the chemistry, the connection, and the character there, it's it's not enough. You need those other three things: chemistry, character, connection, communication, need to be there. So just because we love a person isn't a reason to keep a relationship going, especially if this relationship is not healthy for us. So, and it's also concerning if we're staying in a relationship because there's potential that someday down the road things will be better than what they are. That's kind of this hope that keeps people going. So I just would get really clear with yourself about what kind of changes you would need to see in this relationship and in what time frame. And I would just, if you're not looking to have, I don't know if you're looking to have children or if you are, if you're not, but I for sure would stay on birth control until you get the relationship figured out. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about it. Yep, I agree. Truth Seeker says, if I feel a sense of confusion, it's a sign to slow things down. Yeah. When we experience confusion, it generally means something's not sitting well with us. We can't figure something out. That's what confusion is, right? And the opposite of confusion is clarity. And we tend to get the clarity we need with, I think, being assertive and with time. So if we're willing to see the truth for what it is, the challenge with a lot of people is that we don't want to see the truth for what it is, or we're looking for concrete proof of a problem, of a big problem. And generally, if we're waiting that long for concrete proof, to find out, oh, is this person cheating? Like, well, what kind of proof are you looking for? Like, do you need to catch them in bed with somebody else? Or is it being squirrely with their phone? Is it, they've got condoms in their wallet? I mean, like what is it you're looking for? A lot of people aren't clear on that. And, I would just encourage everybody, like, this is such a game changer when you can kind of change your standard to being like, I can't have like uncomfortable, I can't have this level of discomfort in my life. And like, I need this to end, or I have to end this because I can't have, it's not good for your mental health to have that stress, that just not feel safe and secure in your relationship if your partner's doing squirrely stuff, So yeah, that was a big thing for me. I think for a lot of people as well, of that realizing, if something is really just off-putting and unsettling and causing you mental anguish and perpetual confusion, that's reason enough to get some distance. And that's a sign that something needs to profoundly change, because you can't live like that. It's just too stressful. And dating, kind of I think we've moved away from this so much, and it's a problem. It's kind of why we, I think, end up kind of getting so off track is, dating, it's like an interview process. And it's important that we use both people involved are using their level of discernment but that they know themselves well enough to know, okay, this is what I'm looking for in my life. And it's more important that you understand the direction of your life than it is really what you want in a life partner. If you can understand yourself and understand the path that you are headed on, the rest will figure itself out. But unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this too, like thinking we need to figure out what we want in a partner. But if we don't have clarity about ourselves and what's important to us and where our standards are and where our deal breakers are and what our life direction is, then it's still going to be, it's still not going to work if those things aren't in alignment. So yeah, getting clear with yourself, getting clear with the purpose of dating. It's a period of discernment. It's like an interview. Is this person right for me? And that hopefully that person's asking themselves the same thing. We get tripped up when we get caught up in feelings like, oh, yeah, I'm so attracted to them. We're so focused on the chemistry part of that, but that ebbs and flows. And that's why it's so important for that other foundational stuff to be there. And so when we are dating, to make sure that we're seeing this person in a wide variety of situations. What kind of friends do they have? How are they around their friends? How do they handle conflict? How do they handle confrontation? How do they handle frustration? How do they work well? How do they work as a team? Doing things like go bowling with somebody, play a board game with somebody, do an escape room, things like this. How do they handle frustration and stress and losing and, not getting their way and working as a team? These are all really important things to pay attention to. How do they treat other people? How do they treat animals or children or, the homeless person on the side of the road or the waitress or, who people that they're not trying to necessarily impress. How do they treat other people? Because that can be very telling. How do they treat people? Like, if it's a guy, well, got male or female, how do they treat their parents? Uh, and I'm not saying for those people that have gone no contact that that's a bad thing, but if somebody's like raging at their parents and they're incredibly disrespectful, that's a sign. Watch out for that because odds are you're going to be on the receiving end of that someday. That level, that's a huge red flag. So, just these kinds of things. Mm. Oh, my timer went off 10 minutes ago and it didn't. I was thinking it was late and it didn't make any sound. I don't understand this phone. So frustrating. Well, okay, so I promised we would do a guided meditation tonight because we haven't done one in a while. So we are going to do one tonight. So let's take some time to get comfortable and just get settled into our environment and into this moment and into our body. Just take a series of deep breaths. Inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And with each breath, allowing that breath to travel down deeper into the base of your lungs, allowing your chest to easily and effortlessly rise and fall with each breath. allowing yourself to settle into this moment, to become fully present in your body. Noticing the temperature of the air around you, any sounds that you might hear. And turning inward and noticing the sensation of your heart beating, of your heart pumping oxygen-rich blood throughout your system. And taking a moment to just appreciate what a wonderful gift, what an amazing thing our body really truly is. So many things that go on every second of every moment of every day that we don't have to think about or plan for. It just happens. And it's just all to keep you going. So many things working in combination for your highest and greatest good. And what a gift. And continuing to breathe. Allowing each breath to travel deeper down past your lungs, into your stomach, sending that breath as far down as you possibly can, down into your hips and your lower back, feeling your chest easily and effortlessly rise and fall with each passing breath. Feeling at peace in your body. And realizing that there is so much that is right and good about you. You are strong. You are brave. You've gained a tremendous amount of wisdom. You're dedicated to personal growth. You're curious, inquisitive, supportive, empathetic, and caring and concerned. There are just so many wonderful traits that each of you have that are just so much that is good and right with you. And I hope that you can see that and just acknowledge that within yourself. Now, with each breath in, visualize that breath as a white silverish light. Beautiful, it's healing, it's restorative. Allowing that light and that breath to travel wherever it would like to go in your body. Sending this nourishing, restorative energy to every single cell it touches along the way. Expanding those cells, making them nice and round and healthy. Sending that energy up your torso and down your arms and down into your hips and your legs. And down into your calves and your feet and your toes. Feeling as each of your cells expands like a little balloon, so full of that nourishing, restorative energy. Just healing and repairing itself. And with each passing breath, allowing any muscles that you notice are holding any tension, for that tension to just easily and effortlessly just melt away. And it might help to send breath to any areas that feel particularly tense. Allowing your muscles to relax. For that healing white light to bring oxygen to them, to help them just relax. Feeling the weight of your body with each passing breath. And now let's take a moment to just feel that energy as it's radiating and kind of buzzing throughout your body. That nourishing, restorative energy. Feeling that tingling sensation all throughout your body, up to the tip top of your head, to your fingers, to your toes. Feeling the pulsing of that energy. And now taking a moment and just sending some light and love back out into the world, perhaps to particular people, giving them a virtual hug, just thanking them for their support, thanking them for just being them, and honoring all that is good and right within them, especially the people that are supportive of you and people that are perhaps in the chat tonight, or people that are you have a dear place in your heart. And visualize that energy, giving yourself that light and love and a big virtual hug. Just acknowledging all that is good and right with you and how strong you are and how far you've come. Just letting yourself know that you can rely on you, that there is so much that is good and right with you, and that you have gained so much wisdom and strength. That you know deep down what is nourishing for you and what is draining for you. And that it's okay for you to do more of what's nourishing. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for being here this evening. And this is a weekly live stream we do every Wednesday night, or I at least try to, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go for normally about 3 hours. So I hope to see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Just lots of love to you guys. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I'll see you next week. Okay. Night.